Today I'm going to be trying something that I have never done before, so join me on my journey as I smoke a brisket on a pellet smoker. So here's the brisket I picked up. This is a 17¼ pound brisket. It is a choice grade brisket, but it is Angus beef. If you're looking for one of these, just make sure it has some good marbling in the flat. Now, yes, you heard me right. I have never tried doing a brisket on a pellet smoker. I've done plenty of briskets. I've used my offset smoker and my pit barrel cooker. I've always found that my offset smoker has fantastic flavor for briskets, so that's what I always decide to use. Now with the pellet smoker, the heat's coming from the bottom, so I have to keep that in mind. So I'm gonna be doing a few different things that I wouldn't normally do if I was cooking this on my offset smoker. But the first thing we gotta do is get this thing trimmed, so let's get right into it. Alright, we're going to start with the fat side down because there's a huge pocket of fat right here I like to address first. You can see it kind of peels out. And I actually put this brisket in my freezer for about an hour. Helps remove these chunks of fat. Alright, so now that we got that fat out of there, I can trim down the side a little bit. Just like to get all that oxidized brown meat off. Like up here. And as you can see here, this kind of got a little bit hacked up as well. So I might have to trim this. Now, if you look closely here at the end, sometimes on the briskets, see this line of fat? That's actually separating a different muscle from the brisket. Sometimes that piece of muscle is left on here, and you'll find there's a bunch of fat behind it. So if you see that, go ahead and just cut that off. I just want to get some of this fat and silver skin off of here. So before I flip this over, I really want to shape it now. So I want to come in here and trim a little more of this off. There's a lot of fat down here. But I want to get this flat trimmed up, and it looks pretty good. I tried to find one with a nice thick flat end so you don't have to trim as much off. This thing looks really nice actually. Nice thick flat on here. So all I want to do here is just round this corner off kind of. I'll do this with a few cuts. This has a pretty nice shape to the flat here. You can see it is a little thin over here, so I might go ahead and just trim some of this down. Because all that's just going to get burnt up anyway. So I'm going to be cooking this fat side down. So I really want to make sure that it's nice and smooth on this side of the brisket. So I just kind of want to round this point off just a little bit. All right, so let's get this flipped over to the fat side. With a little more work, you can see this one has a major mohawk. We're gonna have to cut that down. This is some of the best meat for ground meat. Now, since I trimmed the side, you can see how much fat there is. Now, I want to leave probably a little more fat than usual because, like I said, I'm going to cook this fat side down, so I really want that fat there to protect it. So this is looking pretty good for the amount of fat on here. This is exactly how much you want. Like I said, I might trim some of this down more if I wasn't doing this on the pellet smoker, but I do need to address this right here. This is a lot of fat. And right here at the end, that mohawk is also a lot of fat, so I like to come in, just kind of scoop some of that out of there. So this is going to have to lay flat on this fat side. So I'm going to have to trim this big hump down in fat a little bit more. And you can see this is pretty much all fat here. There's just a little vein in here I'm trying to get out. See all the blood coming out of there. Alright, so this is looking pretty good. You can see how it's going to lay nice and flat pretty much. I just need to trim down this point just a hair. Cut some of that oxidized meat off there. And there we are. This is a nice looking brisket to me. Nice flat brisket, because we're gonna have it fat side down. So I think we are good to go. So we're just gonna make a nice SPG blend here. Start off with some kosher salt, black pepper, about 50-50, maybe a little heavier on the pepper. A little bit of garlic powder, and some paprika for color. And that is it. Nice quick and easy SPG, heavy on the P. Let's get this brisket back, we'll get it seasoned. Alright, brisket's back, and you can see this thing looks nice. Very happy with how this one came out. But let's go ahead, get a generous amount of this seasoning we just made on here. And now you can see it's very pepper heavy, just what you want for a nice bark. Paprika also adds a nice color, that's gonna help with bark too. Now you can always go on with a binder if you want. This brisket was plenty tacky enough so it doesn't need a binder. This is a big brisket, so we can go heavy with the seasoning. And just pat it in. Come back and get the edges. All right, so normally this is the top side, but since this is going to be the bottom, that is why I seasoned it first. Now our top side, another generous coating. Just pat that in, make sure the sides are all covered, and that is it. All right, so since I'm doing an overnight cook on this brisket, I really need to monitor the temperature of this. But more importantly, I need to monitor the temperature of my smoker, because in case we have a problem, if the thing shuts off, I need to know. Now, I did a video with the MeatStick comparing it to the meter. This is a really nice wireless meat thermometer. I would suggest you guys check these out, or go watch that video I made and you can see exactly all the features on this thing. I liked it so much, I bought another one of their products, and that is the Mini X. This thing is fantastic because it is such a small meat thermometer. Now the problem with the Mini X is you only get internal temperatures. You can't monitor ambient temps with this. MeatStick just came out with this new thermometer called the Chef X. So this is just like their new wireless meat thermometer, except it is the size of the Mini X, and you now get ambient temp with a small thermometer. So this is what I'm going to be using today. All right, so I need to go ahead and set this cook up on my phone. So I'll show you how that's done. Here we are, we're going to hit setup cook, and this is going to be a smoke. I'm going to do beef sliced brisket. Target internal 185, that sounds pretty good to me because I'm going to pull it off and wrap it. That's not the final temperature. Target ambient temp is going to be 225. Down here, I'm going to go to adjust temp alerts. My internal warning is going to be 180. My target warning is 185. That sounds pretty good. I'm more interested in these ambient temp alerts down below. If my smoker gets below 175, I would like to know, but I'm going to put this above 250. So I'm going to save that, and then it's just going to create the cook. And then now it says to insert the sensor. So I want to get this probably right about there. Put it in at about a 45-degree angle. So it says to put it up to this ambient probe there, so I got that as far in as it needs to be. Now I can just come over here and hit start cooking, and then there you go. We can see our internal temp is about 47, 46 degrees right now, and then it shows our ambient temp at 79 degrees down there at the bottom. So let's go ahead, get this thing out, and let it start cooking. All right, so you can see it is dark out here. I got this thing set to 225. I'm using these Bear Mountain Hickory Oak blend. I found Bear Mountain works very well for me. But let's go ahead and get this Z-Grill's pellet smoker opened up. And then, like I said, we're going fat side down on this brisket here. And then I kind of just like to form it as best I can. So there we go. Let's close this up, and we won't open this again till the morning. All right, so it's been about 12 and a half hours on the brisket. I've let it go, haven't looked at it at all. I've just been monitoring it with this app. Now it just hit 180 degrees, and you can look here, see the ambient temperature was pretty steady, and right now it's reading 198 degrees. So the pellet grill is reading 225 degrees, so the ambient temp on this stick is a little bit off. So I found that to be the case when I'm cooking larger cuts of meat, and I think the reason is because it's a big chunk of meat. That big piece of meat draws some of the temperature temperature out of the stick, and I think that's why you see a lower ambient temp. But I am excited to see how this thing is looking. It's ready to be pulled off and wrapped. Let's go out to the pellet smoker and see how this thing's coming along. All right, so it is raining out here, but this thing has been going along perfectly, no problems at all. But let's check out this brisket. Oh yeah, this thing is looking magnificent. Check out the bark on there. Absolutely wonderful. So I'm gonna go ahead, bring this inside, and we'll get it wrapped up. Check out this brisket. This thing has a wonderful bark on it. Ooh, that fat is nice and crunchy on the bottom. I can feel it. Just check it out. Super juicy. I'm very excited about this brisket now. And if you could smell this thing, it is ridiculous. But I'm gonna go ahead and pull this meat probe out. So I wanted to just do a super basic smoke on this, so any Joe Schmo like me can do it in their backyard. So usually I like using beef tallow when I wrap up my brisket. I'm not going to do that with this because, like I said, I want to keep it super simple. But I do want to make sure to wrap this up nice and tight, and I want to make sure we end up fat side down. So now we're fat side up. There we are. Then I just like to tuck in as much of the paper as I can. And there we are. Now I'm just going to get my MeatStick probe, get this in. And when I'm poking this through the paper, I try and find a spot that's got some of the fat that's already seeped through. It just makes it easier to get the probe through. But this brisket is already feeling super tender, so I don't think it's going to need too long. So I'm going to go ahead and get this out on the smoker, and I'll see you back here. All right, so the brisket is out on the smoker. I have cranked my smoker up to 275 degrees. Now the brisket has already dropped down to 160 degrees just from pulling it off and getting it wrapped, so I want to get it back up to temp as fast as possible. Another reason I like turning my smoker up at the time of wrap is because if you cook a brisket at too low of temperature for a long period of time, you can end up cooking a lot of that fat out, and you're going to end up with a drier brisket in the end. So now that we got a great bark and awesome smoke flavor on this thing, it's wrapped up. It's not going to get any more smoke flavor, so I'm going to crank that temp up to 275 and try and finish this as fast as I can. But considering this is a pellet smoker, I don't want to turn the heat up too much because it's going to have too much heat coming right from the bottom of that pellet smoker, and I don't want to end up with a hard bark on the bottom. So with a pellet smoker, you got to find a happy medium. I'm trying 275. Like I said, I've never done this before, but I think this is going to work out well. Now I'm going to take this thing up to about 200 degrees, and then I'm going to check it for tenderness. So I'll see you guys out there when we hit that 200 degree mark. All right, it's been another 3.5 hours wrapped up. So this thing's at about 205, so it should be done. Now I just want to take my instant read, just check it for tenderness. Oh yeah, feels like butter in the flat. Feels like almost nothing in the point. This thing is definitely done. Let's get a temp on it. So yeah, you can see 207 there in the flat. A little hot in the point, about 211. So this thing got a little bit high, but it's gonna be okay. So I'm gonna get this off and let it rest, and then I'll see you inside to get it sliced up. So here is the brisket. I let this rest for about 4 hours in a cooler, and it slowly came down to about 150 degrees, which is where it is now. So if you do a cooler rest, you can easily maintain temperature for a long time. Just go ahead, wrap this in some towels and put it in a cooler. And a good tip is to fill your cooler with some hot water, then dump it out so it's kind of pre-warmed. So this brisket did get a little hot. We were at around 210 degrees in some spots. So this thing may be a little overcooked, but I'm not too concerned about it because it is going to be delicious either way. But how do we get it unwrapped and sliced up so we can see how it actually came out? So I'm just gonna go ahead, pull our Chef X MeatStick probe out of there. And you can see I got some butcher paper on my table. That's because I think this is going to make a mess. Now this is going to be a little weird for me because the brisket was cooked upside down. I usually go fat side up. So we'll see how this looks. Feels extremely tender. Oh, it looks fantastic though. Ooh, yeah. Let me see if I can get this paper out of here. That fat under here is extremely rendered. Sometimes the paper will stick to the fat, so kind of just be careful as you peel it off because you will lose nice chunks of fat And I don't want to lose this because it's nice and crispy. We're losing a little bit. Yeah, a decent chunk pulled off there. So you can see we had a piece of fat pull off right there. That's the only downfall to that, but look at this rendered fat. That looks amazing right there. But that's actually our bottom side. Check out the top side of this brisket. Now that is some bark right there. And again, no tallow on this when I wrapped it up. If you put some tallow on top of this, this thing would be glistening right now. But I'm super happy with the bark I got on this, considering it is a pellet smoker. Alright, so this is just a little weird to me because this is usually the bottom of the brisket, and being the top, it kind of looks like this is just a flat. Because the flat usually goes along almost the whole bottom of the brisket, but on the top, the point is about halfway over. But this thing is nice and tender. So let's go ahead, slice this up, and see how this thing came out. Alright, so I'm gonna have to try and figure this out because I'm upside down. But it appears to me that the point is ending somewhere around here. So I'm gonna go ahead and just slice this right in half. And here's the moment of truth. Yeah, it's a little bit extra tender. But let's see how this thing came out. Ooh, not bad. Not bad at all. It's kind of weird because it's upside down. That looks more normal, huh? You can see the fat here rendered down beautifully. Got an amazing smoke ring here. Again, let's flip this back to how we are. Just check out the smoke ring on there. I'm happy about this. Let's check this one out, huh? Oh my. Yeah, nice smoke ring. Ooh. Let's get some slices off of this. So first, let me get this point out of here for now. This flat spun around. Let's get a few slices off of here. I'm gonna go thicker than usual because I think it's a little overcooked. Yeah, you can see how it's kind of shredding apart there. Again, not great for competition, but this is going to taste fantastic. So let's cut 2 slices off for now, just to show you that it's a little overcooked. Check out that slice though, huh? Is that not a good looking slice of brisket? Now we'll pass the bend test. Wow, yeah, actually kind of does. But again, I cut this pretty thick. If I cut this thinner, I don't think it'll pass this bend test. But check it out. Nice and tender. So let's get this out of the way. And you can see here how it just kind of shredded apart. That's because it was a little overcooked. But man, that is good. Wow. All right, should have got a bigger cutting board. All right, so let's get into this point. I want to cut these burn ends off first. Save that for later. We'll get some nice slices of this point. It's just falling apart. This may turn into some pulled beef here. Kind of just falling apart on me here. But check that out. Nice and juicy. Yeah, very tender. That's gonna be good though. Now, let me just slice these chunks of burn end up. Oh yeah, these are gonna be so good. But I got my platter ready. Let me give this a try. All right, so the brisket might be a little overcooked. Okay, it's a lot overcooked, but still, this thing isn't as bad as I thought it might be, seeing that it got up to such a hot temperature. And considering this was smoked on a pellet grill, I am super impressed with the results. And for a beginner, this is super easy, because if you have a pellet smoker, you can do this overnight. You don't have to be sitting around all day. It'll be fine to go for 12 hours, unattended completely. You just gotta make sure you go fat side down. But I'm impressed with the smoke ring on there. I mean, just check this thing out. That's a nice slice of brisket. If you told me this was done on a pellet smoker, I don't think I would believe you. But I'm gonna go ahead and give this a try, see how it tastes. And I wanna start with one of these little burnt end cubes. Wow. This is melt in your mouth tender. Absolutely delicious. That basic seasoning is perfect. You get a lot of black pepper flavor there. Exactly what you want with a brisket. But let me give this flat a try and see how this is. You can see it's nice and tender. Very good. Obviously a lot more dry than the point, but it is still pretty moist for what it is. And again, I'm super impressed with this pellet smoker, how you can create a brisket like this. I still prefer my offset smoker, but the ease of this might make it worth it for me. The offset smoker, I'm out there every half an hour at least, tending to the fire. This I was able to put on overnight, go to bed, wake up, no problems at all. Wrap it up with no tallow. And again, if you have tallow, I would highly suggest putting some on top of there when you wrap it. I think it'll make this a little more moist, but I wanted to make sure that you knew you didn't need all the fancy tallow and whatnot to make a delicious brisket just using a pellet smoker. And also this MeatStick Chef X helped out a ton, and I really like how small this probe is. You're really gonna need something like that for an overnight cook just to monitor your pit to make sure you don't lose your fire at all. If you watched any of my videos before, you probably noticed I have a nice apron on. Not really an apron guy, but I got this nice leather apron. It is handmade in Holland from cow and buffalo leather, and this thing is really nice. And if you're interested in this, I will make sure to leave a link down below, and I'm gonna put a link for that MeatStick down there as well if you're interested in that. Now, along with that, I'm gonna put everything else I use in my videos down below. So if you saw something today that you're interested in, go check out the description. You'll probably find it down there below. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like. And if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe right over here. And if you want to see another great barbecue video by me, you can check this one out over here. But most importantly, get out there and smoke something good.